Shalom, shalom, all. This is Mike Clark and David Ben Shul with UTOM Shares, www.utom.org. Another week, another show. It's going to be a good show today, too, also. And no further ado, I want to introduce to you Mr. David Ben Shul. That's a good introduction. That's a good
That's
one.
a good one. You got the
Yeah.
nice deep voice in
Yes,
there.
yeah, I got it. I got it for you.
Yeah, like Orson Welles, like a deep
Yes.
voice, a voice that you just want to listen more to.
That's right.
Like a fatherly voice.
Why don't you listen to me then?
Oh, and so everybody.
There you go.
But I'm in uniform today. Yes. Hello, shalom, everybody. Yeah, we got our next show. But before I talk about what we're going to do today, I'm going to recap a little.
Yes.
And just kind of like build this journey, this trail up. So you can see, that there is a holistic approach taking place. There is a journey taking place. Because after all, that's what we're really trying to teach people, is that your walk is a journey. Your journey is a walk. It's not a destination. As soon as you get in a destination, you're not on a journey anymore. So we have to keep this going. So like we started with was the belief of the creator. It's not a belief, not even a faith in the creator, just the acceptance there is. That way we didn't bring any baggage into or expectations upon the creator, but let the creator express itself to us as we need to see the creator. Then after that, we spoke. What was the next thing we spoke about after that? The creator, what's the other next step in the walk?
We went into we didn't go into destination. We went into the journey.
Right, where we talked about what a destination and what a journey is. That's right. That's right. So we went into more detail with that. And then last week we talked about the spiritual aspect and some discussion on that. Now we're going to deal with a part of it that I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this.
No, but this is one that needs to be handled.
But
If of anything we've talked on, which they've all been important to me, this is what you're not told about when you sign up for the journey. So that's why I'm excited about today's show.
Yeah, and this is something, we have the T-shirt. We went through this many, many times. There is hardly a day where I don't go through this, or even the results of it, and that is something called loneliness. When you're on a journey, a lot of times you're taking it alone. And, we may, I know that as I'm saying, it sounds like a negative aspect, but it's actually not. It's part of the process. It's part of the walk. It's part of this journey. But we need to understand what it is. And yes, it does bother us. Yes, there are many times where, Mike, you can tell me, we've talked about this many times. You can tell stories where you've been kind of like run over by the bus.
Ooh.
By others.
Oh, well, it's up to 13 years ago when I actually started this journey. I always had the comfort of a community, whether within church, Messianism, Hebrew roots, or whatever. I was always within a community, a physical community. But when I said yes to the Creator, and I'm not saying this is the pattern for everybody that has to follow, this is just what happened to me. When I said yes to the Creator and started following Him, I started finding distance between me and a lot of these communities. And that's kind of how it started at that point.
Yeah, and you're going to do that because remember, when you're dealing with a community that's not growing, not expanding, not going anywhere, you're moving away from it. So that's where the path of the individual starts taking place. Remember, the Genesis walk, as we're talking about, is a personal walk. So it's not meant to have a group with you. So you're going to automatically be separated from others. And not only you're going to be separated because of the journey, but also because your thoughts, your thinking, your paradigm shift that's going to be going on. The fact that you're going to be listening to the Creator, you're going to be transformed by the Creator. A lot of people are not ready to hear that about you, or even say, "Oh, should I need to do that?" So it becomes a point sometimes even with contention. You don't mean it to. And it's very important that as you're going through this treat people with dignity and respect. That's always important. But still, you end up being alone many times, and it can be quite loud. Silence can be very loud. In fact, I remember when I took Dale Carnegie course, they taught that silence is sometimes louder than sound. So, and it was used as a way to punctuate your speaking. So, they talked about that a lot. So, yeah, there is that loneliness aspect that we have within this picture. Now, again, because you're on a walk, people will come together with you on occasions and then they will leave. So, we have to expect there are going to be points in which we will meet others. And then they'll have to, for a moment, and then they'll go off to their own path and you need to go on your path. So you do get contact there. And sometimes you do become part of a group that's going the same direction. And then at some point, there's a diversion that takes place, and some or all of you will split. So there's this constant flux that's going on with this, and it does cause lonely things. So, Mike.
Well, no, I was thinking even as you were saying that, even you and I had times of where we were part of a group, and basically I just had to leave. Just I had to leave. I mean, and you were like, yeah, we know this is part of the rules. You can go away and come back if you want to, and because there are times when you get involved with different groups and it sounds like a beautiful, wonderful thing at first, and then you see the mechanics of things start working and you're like, this is not what the creator kind of wants me to be a part of. If I wanted to do this, I could be a part of so and so club or whatever, but I know what the creator's walk has for me and I don't fit into it. And I'm going to say honest with you, David, I think most every group seems to fall apart at some time. Now, of course, organized religion is always going to be bonded. In other words, churches and synagogues and stuff pretty much are going to stay solid as far as there is a building. But I think with your ideas, I mean, not just you, but our ideas of the way the Creator is leading us at times, that at some point in time, there's going to be something you're going to be like, man, I just don't feel like I fit in here no more. I just feel like I've lost connection with this group. I know it's happened to me many times.
Well, Mike, when we first started working together, I told you, everyone that I worked with had permission to come and go. And you've gone off a few times. What, like two or three, like three times maybe? Twice. It was twice. Okay. Feels like three times. No. It was twice. That's right.
Oh, by
And
the way, no, just kidding.
yeah. Oh, thanks. Where you said, listen, I this is too much for me right now. I have too much going on. I have too many difficulties right now. I need to get away and think. And I said, go. It's okay. And I always kept the door open. I said, Mike, when you're ready, come back. And since I pretty much am you, Tom, I had nowhere to go when I wanted to run. So that's why I was always here. Not that I was. And we talked about this many times about shutting this down and saying,
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I'm tired of this. I'm hurting.
Yes.
And but we didn't. We did what we had to do. We would shut the doors for a little while, then start over. Um, when you, Tom, was going in one direction, I felt a need to go in another direction. Tension started to build. I had to break a relationship off there. So this is all part of the walk, and sometimes it's very painful. And it's not something that's for the faint of heart, but that is part of the walk because you are deciding, do I follow the world's ways or do I follow the creator's ways? And yes, in reality, you need a little bit of a balance of the two to keep your sanity. But the reality is a lot of times the creator will pull you one direction and hold you very tight so that you depend more on the creator,
Right. I agree.
trying to keep you away from certain things and then releases you. It's just like raising children, Mike. You've done it, I've done it. We're a tight family. Hey, we go places together, we eat together, we play together, we see movies together and so on and so forth. And then what happened? The kids grow up and it's time for them to go off on their own. And it's tough. You got to let them go and experience their life. where and do what they need to do. So it's the same way, and it causes a little heartache because you're going to miss them, and create a little bit of an empty nest feeling. So just like that, so is our walk.
Well, and that's so true. And I was thinking about the times that, you give people permission to leave and to go. Sometimes that saves friendships, or it shows maturity amongst people when you can say, okay, David, you need to go take care of the situation. I got it. Don't worry about it and stuff like that. Where a lot of people within um, groups, they can't deal with that. They're always afraid, oh, David's going to go start something else. He's going to be competitive with me. He's got information from me. So it's also sometimes the loneliness comes from an attack, from ignorance sometimes, that people really don't understand why you feel this. All right, here's an example, and I'll tie it into the Genesis walk for me and you. 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, if you'd asked us about the Noahide laws, we'd have said, nah, not good start, but nah, we don't believe that. And it may have actually excluded us with a bunch of other people who felt the same way at times. But over time, we've seen like, hey, this is a great starting point. This is a great point that people need to come together to meet the Creator. And it tied it in with your journey of the Genesis, the Abraham walk first, and then the Genesis walk at that. So sometimes loneliness can bring you closer revelation to what the Creator is trying to give you to share with others, and even yourself, because I know many times when we come to points like, David, let's just shut this thing down. Nobody cares. Well, not within a few weeks, all of a sudden we get I don't want to say a revelation, but we get energized with some other thought. Oh yeah, we didn't think about this and stuff like that. So yeah, the loneliness can cause attacks, it can cause separations, but sometimes this loneliness gives you the motivation and gives you a revelation that you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. And you also, we think of Israel. I'm sorry, Abram. Where did he go? And chapter 12, verse 1. Basically, leave your country, leave your kindred, and go into the wilderness. Why? Well, now you remove distractions. And sometimes the loneliness is removing you from distractions so that a new part of the path can be revealed to you, and so you can go down a certain path. So this is part of that picture. So it is a positive aspect of the walk, though we view it as negative because we are gregarious. We like having others around us, and sometimes we seek approval of others, whether we like to say we don't or not. The reality is we do, but we get pulled away, and there's no voices around except you and the Creator. And now you got to come to a crisis of belief, a crisis of a paradigm shift, a thought difference that has to take place, so that now you can go down that new path.
Well, that's true. And, and as you said earlier, when you have children, we are taught, especially here in the States, especially in the South, that you raise your children up within the church. You raise your children up to have friends, Sunday school and stuff like that. And then when you start walking with the Creator and you're not close to any Jewish community whatsoever, you're an hour, and of course, it's too far away, and you find yourself isolated. You really have to start listening to the Creator to find out how you are going to steer your family, because it's not about church. I went to church my whole life. I went to Sunday school. I was brought up in the church. I did all of it. But it wasn't until I took this step out of the journey that we're on, that I really started listening to the Creator. And I have struggled with the Creator. I have fought with the Creator. I have doubted the Creator. And He's not been mad at me one time, by the way. He knows what we're going through. But through my loneliness, I have grown more. Yes, it hurts. It's painful at times. I would love to have a community of Israelites who are just seeking, whether Noahide, whatever. But the realism is it's not here. So the Creator is my fellowship. And to me, that's enough for right now. Yeah, I'm like you. I'd rather have some, I wish you lived closer to me. We'd never get to sleep because we'd be studying Torah all the time, which may not be a bad thing. Tammy and Mandy may kick us out. But the thing is I really feel like sometimes the loneliness and the heartache that we have been through and will continue to walk through is actually what helps us grow and to become closer to the Creator at times.
Yeah, right. Yes. And I also, I mean, there's another aspect of this picture I would like to touch on as you were talking about that. And sometimes they're more painful than they have to be. That loneliness. Sometimes we get in a situation where those around us don't understand, and they um, animosity is created, anger, frustration, not necessarily on your part, though it can be, but sometimes because of other people. Um, I've been told, I was told by a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, that I was not good enough for him. And that got me very upset. Why was I not good enough? Because I asked questions. Didn't want to answer my questions. So you're not good enough for around here. Just get lost. I've had
Wow.
another person say to me, um, essentially, well, I will talk to you because you're Jewish. Basically, that means kiss off. I really don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But because you're a fellow Jew, I have to show you a certain amount of kindness that I would not show to a goy.
Right.
I've run into that.
Right.
In my early days when I was dealing with Messianism, I've had pastor. I remember a specific pastor who I would ask certain questions of, and I like asking questions. And he didn't want to speak to it. Even others. People sometimes don't like you asking questions.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you deal with boxes that are not dynamic, that are not growing, you got to fit the mold. And that's what's happening as you go in this journey by yourself, is you're not fitting a mold.
Right.
That scares people because they lose control.
Right.
They're afraid of what they're trying to create.
Right.
As well intended as it may still be a box. So we have those things. I just want to say, sometimes it's not so romantic. It's not so easy. There could be a lot of heartache involved between people,
Right.
because which creates that loneliness,
Right.
that rejection. It creates a situation of rejection. So we had to fight through that too. But the reality is, those people who do stuff like that, let them go. Don't need them. You just
And,
move on.
and another thing to carry on what you just got through saying is, when we get to this point of being whipped by rejection, at some point, in other words, I may contact a rabbi and he may answer me real short, but in turn, he's not being rude. He just is a very impersonal person, maybe, but I'm already in that condition of being rejected. So I'm getting that email like, oh, he don't want to talk with me either. He's rejecting me also. So we have to be careful when we get into those points of rejection, and we get in those points that we feel like nobody wants to hear or do anything with us, that we don't let it soak through the whole being, because a lot of times there's just people that, plus of all, you can't read personality in chats sometimes. And unfortunately, we are so driven with messenger and email and stuff like that, that when you write me a letter, I can't tell. So matter of fact, sometimes when we chat, I have to say what with a question mark, because I understand what you're saying, but I don't know what you're trying to say with it sometimes. And that's just the way it is. But when we fall into a period of being rejected, sometimes we wear that on our sleeve, and it, like you said, it goes a little bit too far at that point, and everybody's rejecting us, when in turn, at that point, nobody is really. We're there.
Yeah, we get a little oversensitive sometimes too, and that's true, because it may be, maybe you've had an incident with this one person, this one group, or whatever, and it's a genuine situation. But then if something else happens down the line with another person, and you kind of throw it into the context of your experience just a few days ago, and you can't do that. You got to keep them as isolated incidences, because they may have nothing to do with each other. but it's also a time in which we can reflect about ourselves.
Right.
That is, we don't like being treated certain ways, or we may not like certain situations or being pushed into certain situations. So we learn from them and say, well, we don't want to be like that. And then when you find another person who is in that lonely situation,
Right.
you can help them because you've been there.
Right.
And it may be only for a moment,
Right.
but you can help them. And really, I think that's the key with this walk, is that you're constantly meeting up, disbanding, meeting up, disbanding. And it's always in a different configuration, different personalities. People grow, they mature. And through that, we're constantly in flux and motion, gelling. We're slowly gelling. But part of that requires us to be put into a situation that's uncomfortable for us.
Right. Right. And as you said, you used the example of Abraham, who, when he had to leave his whole family, his whole nation and everything, he set off on his own. I mean, he has his own people following him and stuff like that. But yet he's not around his family no more. He had to reject, the rejection of his father from idolatry, when he went and shattered off. So Abraham is a perfect example of that. Even Adam and Eve, after they did what they did, the rejection from what happened, which we know is a deeper story to it. So we see the patriarchs went through the same thing that we go through. We like to put them up on a pedestal sometimes, but I think if we actually lived their life, we would experience the same things that we're talking about here. They went through the same thing.
Exactly right. And well, look what Abraham did. He had the corners of a tent open.
Yes.
He probably got excited when he saw somebody walking down the street.
Yeah.
Saying, oh my gosh, it's a person, first person in 7 days. Come over here. Let's talk. I'm sure he was excited. And then, when they had to leave, and maybe not on a good footing, I'm sure he hurt. He hurt.
Right. Right.
Sure, it was something simple and easily overcome.
Right. Well, I even look at Moses, and he was the head of the whole community, but look at the loneliness that man went through. I mean, he had really hardly any allies on his side. He was continually listening to bickering and biting. We want to go back to Egypt. We want to have meat. We want to do this. We want to do this. So he was probably one of the most isolated people at that time, listening to the complaining, the rejection. He never was good enough and all this stuff. So he's another perfect example for what we can look at also.
He's an absolute perfect, because the thought is there's approximately 2.5 million people.
Right.
So out of 2.5 million people, he probably had Joshua as his friend, and that's probably about it.
Right.
Of course, his brother Aaron,
right.
But brothers have no choice.
No, it's just, it is what it is. It is what it is.
But I think Moses is a perfect example, because he wasn't in the wilderness. He was, but he wasn't. He was in the wilderness in a crowd. He didn't belong to the crowd, and often he was at odds with the crowd, because, okay, Creator, what do you want? Okay, crowd, what do you want? Well, sorry, I got to go with this one.
Right.
And that's a forced exile, in a sense. Exile in terms of alliances with other people.
Right.
He had to go true to the path that he has been walking.
Right.
And he was the humblest of men.
Yes, what it said.
So humility, I think, is part of this. And I believe it's also part of, I don't want to say squashing, because I know many people talk about nullifying the ego, and I think that's a dangerous thing, because the ego does serve its purpose.
Yes.
There is a purpose for the ego. Even the Talmud talks about the ego. Without the ego, roads would not be built, cities would not be built.
Right.
These things, our spouses, would we have pursued our spouses if we didn't have if we didn't listen to our ego to some point?
Right.
This is what keeps humanity going.
Right.
So there is a good purpose for having the ego, but the ego has to be contained. It has to be brought back, roped up, and has to be brought back sometimes.
Right.
And like a wild horse that becomes a rideable horse.
Right.
Takes time, but you need to do that. So I believe sometimes this loneliness is to isolate our ego.
Right. So
that we can learn more about ourselves, because ourselves are defined many times through that ego.
So we're getting close to the end. So
Yeah.
we need to for some. All right, here's an example. A couple of months, maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, we had somebody in one of the Facebook groups who basically said, oh, I hate, this journey is so hard. I feel like just giving up because I'm not accepted by the Jews. I can't be a Christian and a Messianic, and I'm basically just out here, and my kids have no, they have nothing. I don't know what to do for them. Where would the starting point? I know you can't tell them what to do because ultimately we're going to do what we're going to do. But what advice would you give somebody that you've walked this path? Me and you both have walked this path. What would you say to that person who just feel they're at wit's end right now? They're close to atheism. They're close to, they're close to just reverting back to their previous religion because they at least can find fellowship there. What would you tell that person?
That's not easy. I would have to
I
learn
agree.
more about that individual before
Right.
I could do that.
Right.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
You didn't warn me about this one. But people have to understand the Creator's bigger than us.
Yes.
The Creator is beyond our capability of fully apprehending. We
Correct.
can only apprehend and understand the Creator according to who and what we are.
Right.
So that's why the Creator starts growing us.
Right.
And that growing process, part of it is sometimes we have to be pulled into our own little wilderness.
Right.
It could be in a crowd like Moses, or it could be out in the desert. You may one day wake up and say, I'm going to go live in my cabin for the next 2 years. I need it. I need time to be between me and the Creator. You may be asked to do something like that.
Right.
But the loneliness means that you're starting to focus on your relationship on the Creator. So it's not a bad thing.
Right.
So you got to let it happen. And what I really like about the loneliness, I don't like loneliness, but about the loneliness that we tend to have with this walk is not a let's put a bullet in my head loneliness. It's a rejection,
right,
but an acceptance on the other side.
Right.
So it's not detrimental. It's us having to come to a crisis and say, well, the Creator's revealing itself to me. Do I have faith in the revelations the Creator's been giving me?
Wow.
Do I want more? And this is one thing I use for myself. One thing. Often I will be in a lonely situation, and I kind of look into my mind, and I try to see the other half of me, the spiritual side of me, is it smiling?
Ooh.
Because what happens is that part's smiling, but the physical part of me isn't.
Right.
The me, myself, and I, not happy.
Right.
But the altruistic side of me is happy.
Right.
And I realize I'm on a right course.
Right.
I don't know if that helps, but I think we can develop a lot out of that. But
well, as me and you say all the time, it's perspective. You're either looking up or you're looking down. And it's interesting to me that through all my studies of different religions and stuff, and that the people who want to seek the Creator, and this is hard for us to comprehend, but for those who would, like in Christianity and stuff, it'd be the monks and the mystics, and Judaism, it'd be the Kabbalists. They all separate themselves from the community. They go into a cave or a monastery. They don't even speak. Those people who really want that connection sometimes are sacrificing. Yet in our perspective, we are there. We're in that lonely space. We're in that monastery of life, or we're in that cave. We need to maybe learn to embrace that sometimes, that this is my chance to hear the revelation. Maybe I'll come out with a Zohar, or maybe I'll come out with some kind of, something from my, I'm not looking for nothing, but you see what I'm saying is our perspective sometimes may be wrong. We maybe should be embracing, as hard as it is this time, embrace this time that we have, because we don't know what's going to happen 3 or 4 years down the road. And this may be our chance to get what we need to be getting from the Creator.
Actually, I think your summation is better than mine. I really like that.
I didn't try that, but that was...
Well, I think that's fair enough. You asked me the hard question. Yeah.
I studied.
You got it.
I knew the question, but no, I really do. I think that if we embrace it, as hard as it is, and I know, like I said, me and you we could do 3 shows of sobbing of what we've been through. But I have learned to embrace this hard time. We just recently faced some rejection or whatever. Sometimes I laugh at it now. I mean, I know you were. I just kind of look at it, I'm like, here we go again. I kind of not look for it, but I take it as it is, because as we've been studying the Zohar, I know what it's doing for me personally. I know what it's doing as far as building me. So I embrace this time. As hard as it's been 13 years to get here, it's been horrible at times, but yet this is my chance. This is my chance to connect with the Creator and to walk on, instead of taking the opt and going to join a congregation, which there's nothing wrong with that. I want to say that there's nothing wrong with the congregation. But as far as connection, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah, and it's true with myself too.
Yeah.
It's the rejection quite often
Oof.
is my willing not to accept,
Exactly.
or to embrace it.
Right.
And if we embrace something, then are we really alone?
Right.
Something to contemplate.
Yeah.
So sometimes we got to take a look at this rejection part and say, well, it's because I'm not moving in the direction I should be going.
Right.
So there's a lot of aspects of this that we're just touching on just with the show.
Right.
I'm sure we can continue this for another half an hour easy.
Yes.
And still not really cover everything. So there's
Right.
a lot of psychological processes. There's a lot of cultural aspects involved. There's a lot of who and what we are, our experiences or not experiencing things. Everyone, like you said, has a different perspective. So they are different. Every person's different. So their reaction to things are entirely different. You would react to things that I wouldn't, and vice versa. You may be saying, I feel lonely now. I'm like, oh, that's a playground for me, and vice versa. So it's the Creator who's taking us as an individual, recognizing, sometimes separating us even from Him. Sometimes He'll separate us from our surroundings and from Him.
Yes.
And that's hard, because now
That's
you got to turn
hard.
into yourself.
Yes.
You are right. The Kabbalists, Sufis as well, they will go away. And I read and heard from many rabbis, Kabbalists, who separated themselves from the community to do their thing.
Right.
And because they wanted to be closer to Hashem, not further. So they went through these bouts of loneliness and embraced it.
Right.
So is it that time, Mike?
It is just about. I want to make one more point.
Go.
As with this, we're over already anyway. With this walk that we're talking about, for so many people, the first thing is conversion. Whether it's Judaism or whatever. All right. Well,
because they don't want loneliness.
Right. But the problem is trying to live a halakha true Judaism, even if you convert in the remote parts of America, is so hard, if not impossible. Like, for instance, here in Georgia, if you're close to Atlanta, kosher foods, and that's all accessible. But as you start pulling away from Atlanta and you get out into the suburbs and stuff, you don't have that. So your options. But what we're saying is with the Noahide laws and the Genesis walk and the Abraham walk, you start where you're at. You're not worrying about this stuff. You're getting connected, and He'll start showing you some tidbits and everything like that through this journey. But we're saying, don't worry about all that burden stuff that at first that you think that you have to do. Get connected first, and then once you're connected, He'll lead you on that journey. And that helped me also embrace the loneliness, because this is what Mandy said so many times. What if we convert? What do we do? There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go.
That is very true. And even like my walk, when I grew up in a agnostic family,
right?
I learned who I was.
Right.
Like I said, during the 70s, they had all those Holocaust movies. So
right.
who I was meant to go in the head.
Right.
Or being gassed. That's all it meant.
Yeah.
But as I started to grow and started questioning and started reading the Torah and
Right.
saying, wow, I had to start practicing something.
Right.
The creator, see, perfection's overrated. The
Yes.
creator wasn't expecting perfection from me. The creator basically said, okay, the first thing we're going to do with you is just recognize that the Torah is valid, that the Torah needs to be followed.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have a problem with that. Okay, good, good, good. Now Passover's coming around. Celebrate Passover with a group. Okay, I'll do that. And then Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur. And then I just built from there. And
Right.
then over the years, then finally I said, wait a minute, what about Sabbath? And then I started doing the Sabbath. And I don't perfectly observe Sabbath. I
Right.
at least halakhically. I don't
Right.
perfectly, I definitely not halakhically. But I permitted myself to be on this journey
Right.
of transformation.
Right.
And that's really what this journey is all about. That's the Genesis journey is about a transformation of oneself. And then
Exactly.
eventually there's going to be others.
Right.
And then you'll connect. It's just not yet.
Right. Well, the interesting thing is I heard something today. I heard a teaching that was talking about, it's dangerous, and it's dangerous when you try to live a Jewish lifestyle when you don't understand what a Jewish lifestyle is. So at this point, this is what me and you were saying. Shabbos. Well, halakhically, I don't have to worry about any of that because, first of all, I'm not in a community. I'm not a Jew, first of all. Second of all, I just need to start celebrating that day. And as you said, the Creator starts adding stuff to you from that point. He starts showing you. And you're like, then later on, the rabbi say, well, how did you know that? It's a long story. It's a long story, Mr. Rabbi. It's a long story. But I have noticed that I have learned more from you and other people and the Creator than I have from any books that I've read on Halakha and stuff like that, because once the Creator leads you on the journey and you start seeing the rewards of this loneliness and hurt and stuff like that, you're like, this really is all worth it. Really is.
Well, I can tell you, not to go too much further, but
Yeah.
I think this would be encouraging for people. I know a friend of mine who is a Kohen. He one day, he was actually Catholic. And he gave up Catholicism and he went to some charismatic church because he was searching. He started searching. Right. And in the middle of something that was going on, this person, my friend, got up and started dancing and started chanting and singing the Kol Nidre.
Oh.
He didn't know the Kol Nidre. He didn't know. He never done it before.
Right.
Maybe he heard it somewhere. It's possible. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
But he started dancing around with his eyes closed and chanting and singing this. And after he left that church, in the church, there was a Jewish woman who I guess was Messianic. And she says, oh, you were singing in Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre, what's that? So she told him. And so he went immediately home, went to his parents, looked at them, right, his father, and says, why didn't you tell me I was a Jew? And his father says, how did you know that? He says, I was in a church singing and dancing in Kol Nidre. He left that.
Right.
But in the long term, he's gone, but he goes to an Orthodox shul. But there was a revelation to him.
Right.
He did it. What started with me is one day I started singing and chanting. One day I was in the car and I started chanting the Kaddish.
Wow.
My parents never did that. My family never did the Kaddish.
Wow.
Where did I learn it from?
Right.
It's my DNA memory, my soul memory.
Right.
Started singing, and then all of a sudden I was like, what was that? And then I found out it was the not Kaddish, I'm sorry, Kiddush.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's Kaddish, pretty impressive, man.
I know. Okay. But over the wine.
Right.
Blessing over the wine.
Right.
And that's what started making me question. So, Creator, he gets us started somehow.
He
But
does.
again, loneliness is part of this journey. We
Right.
had to accept it as being part of the experience and the fact.
Embrace it.
Thankfully, it's not all the time, but it's
No.
frustrating
No.
because when we have a real closeness to the Creator, it's very vivid, it's very strong, and
Right.
so any little bump in the road feels like a mountain.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna
That was
leave it there.
awesome. That was awesome. That was awesome. And we could go on and on because I got a lot of stories
Right.
still, but we won't. But that was great. So go ahead and say goodbye to everybody.
All right, everyone, you take care. May Hashem bless you according to your efforts to pursue and follow Him. Baruch Hashem,
Efforts.
everybody. Shalom, shalom.
Efforts. And this show, I'm telling you, listen to it more than once because we're not experts in loneliness, but we've had enough experience with loneliness and aggravation and rejection that we could write a book, maybe
I
a
don't
book
want to.
one day.
I don't want to be an expert in this subject.
No, I don't either, but unfortunately we have. So it's perspective. And if you have any questions, please go on the webpage, www.utom.org, push contact, and David will be glad to answer any questions. Also, to go to our YouTube page, like notifications, and we'll keep on plugging along. So until next time, join us again to UTOM Shares. Thank you very much. Shalom.
Shalom.